having conviction as to you're either necessarily convinced by something.
Necessarily?
Yeah, you don't control.
So you don't have free will?
Over what convinces you not to. You don't actively
So
choose
you're a
to be convinced by
determinist?
something. I never know such as a determinist.
You can spend time on a subject and read around it. You can do all that. Do you do that? Does he do that?
I can't read this. I can't presume what he's doing.
There's a vast amount of Christian literature. I doubt you've touched much of it yourself. I doubt he has.
That's an assumption.
How old are you?
That's an assumption.
You're 19. Are you in university?
That's condescending, no?
Are you in your first year or second year?
Going into my second year.
Right. Now I've read a lot. I read quite a bit when I was 19, but not a huge amount. I know that now, because you just can't. You go through school till you're 18, right? Right, be with me, so I'm not kind of. Then you've done 1 year of university and you narrow everything down to a particular subject, don't you? Or maybe 3 subjects. Am I wrong?
Depends how wide you want to learn.
All right then, okay, all right. Well, there's a bit of narrowing down, right?
That's more than 3 subjects.
So, hey, maybe a polymath.
You never know.
The point is, right, when we're at school, we're doing a load of subjects and we really just skate over them. So we don't do much reading until when we're 18. Then we get to university and we go deeper. But we're in a narrow range of subjects and we don't really read a ton of stuff. Certainly not by the time we're 19 or 20.
Ask him, don't presume.
Not because we're thick.
You can't presume that he doesn't.
When you leave university,
might be a genius.
You've got tons of free time to carry on reading.
polymath.
What I'm getting at with you is not to condemn you, just to say you're completely normal.
He's condemning you, sir.
You can exercise your free will by reading, by going deep
Patronising
into
you.
Christian writing, and exercise your free will on what you read. I just don't think at 19 you're in a position to be able to say yay or nay. He's older than you. He's in a better
Patronising
position.
you, no?
But the thing is, that was my argument about the breadth of what we read. So what I'm saying is that when you are reading something initially, so for example, when you read a fictitious book, something which doesn't require active liking or disliking, you will know whether or not you like a fictitious book within the first 15 pages or so. Your nature can sometimes repulse you from the book. That is not a free choice you're making to read this book, to like it. You cannot
Oh yeah, I'm not
encourage
talking about that.
Exactly, so that is not his fault. If he comes across theological arguments or Christian literature, it could be from the canon, from the church fathers, from the magisterium, whatever. Whether or not he's read it is not an act of free choice. It's just something within his nature which can't find.
No, there's
Well done,
difference
sir.
here.
That's
This
well
is
done.
not about
Well put.
feelings.
Of course it is.
It's not about feelings. It's about you study the Catholic faith, I'd say, but study widely in Christianity and the other religions too. And then your actual power of judgment, which is not just an emotional response, your power of judgment can be exercised because your will is active then. On the basis of what you've read. You're not saying, oh, I just get this feeling of repulsion or attraction.
Is
It's
will
like
not a
that.
feeling?
Your intellect is involved.
But the exercise can only come once you've made the decision.
No, you make what you do. You actually you go.
An exercise is acting out something. You have to have a stable premise before you act out something.
What you do, you actually go and read a lot. That's just an act of a decision of the will to go and read a lot. Then once you've done that, you exercise your judgments on what you're reading. There's no emotion involved in that.
What's
But
serious?
then that's the time of whether or not you find that this shit interesting.
No, yeah,
The will-
put interest out of it. I'm saying because you might find something uninteresting that's really important, and find something interesting that's really stupid. Most people do this. That's why they spend time on the Johnny Depp trial, because it's really interesting, but utterly frivolous.
How are you going to determine what's important and what's interesting?
By you
How are you
exercising
going to
your,
objectively categorise that?
you can use your judgments, which is this. For example, the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial, utterly unimportant. It's about 2 individuals and that's like nothing to do with you. Does God exist? Does God not exist? That's important to you because the teaching is that God made you and you're heading for judgment at the end of your life. So quite different from the Johnny Depp trial. Your judgment determines that. If you can't exercise your judgment by an exercise of will on that, then you may as well be saying, well, actually, the question of the existence of God is no different from the question of whether Johnny Depp beats Amber Heard or not.
But surely it's more important to question whether or not there is a judgment rather than seeing that a judgment's already there and I should be rearing my life towards it.
Oh yeah, but I'm saying a clear categorical difference is you can decide what is important and what is not to look into by exercising your judgment. And those two instances I gave, perfect example of that. So then once you've exercised your judgment, that it's worth putting your time into the question of the existence of God, then you can study the proofs for the existence of God, so-called, and you can decide whether they're compelling or not. You can do this by studying philosophy. And of course, it won't be like, oh, I have this feeling about whether this proof is sound or not. It'll be purely an intellectual exercise. That's what I'm getting at. But I'll go beyond that because I don't want to leave it there. Our faith teaches that you will not come to the faith unless God leads you. And that's where this guy is right, in a way that I wanted to come to.
Eventually, then free will is out of the equation.
Hold on. It is out of the equation in the sense that God has predestined from the beginning those who are to be saved. But how does he decide who to predestine? This is the question. The whole question of predestination is the big thing. What it means, what we Catholics say though, is there's a pit you can fall into, and John Calvin fell into it. It's that nobody has free will. They're going to hell or they're going to heaven, and it's determined before they're born. We say, no, there is predestination, but your free will is part of that predestinating process. Yeah, there's a tension, but it's there. We say you exercise your free will. So I say this: you know that you can exercise your judgment to differentiate between the important and the unimportant. You know you can exercise your judgment without emotion on, say, proofs of the existence of God, and so your free will can operate in a massive way on coming to faith or not. But we will say that when you're in that exercise and you're going that far, in the end, it is God who will bring you or won't, but you will always be using your will and keeping yourself open. What you can do of your free will is, though God tries to pull you in, you can cut yourself off from that grace, and then you'll be damned. But it's always damnation of your own free will.
Sorry, say something.
God will therefore you will find that you were not predestined for heaven.
Excuse me.
Because your free will, God foresaw.
You just said
reject
free
grace.
will. You just said that free will was part of the predetermination.
Yes.
So there is predetermination entirely.
Yeah,
free will is part
Catholic
of the
predestination is not saying that you have no free will, that it is simply your fate, your destiny is determined from before you're in the womb.
By whether
we
or not
say
your free will
that
will
God
compel you to
predestines.
follow God, which is therefore already predetermined. If your free will is part of that predestination, then it's just another element of who you are, and it is predetermined.
The Catholic faith teaches that there's predestination and there is free will. Now, you have a sense of free will, am I wrong?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Now, you know, everybody knows that in the Old Testament there are prophets. They prophesy the future. And yet, how can you do that if you've got vast numbers of human beings who are exercising their free choice at all moments? And yet we say that Isaiah prophesied the suffering and death of Christ. We say that Daniel prophesied the coming of the Messiah and the events that happened in his life. And yet we know there's free will. If there are really prophets, it is a conflicting conundrum to understand how there can be such and yet there be free will. And yet,
yeah, how can you reconcile that?
There is.
How can you
so
reconcile that then?
This is a divine mystery. All we do is this. We say, exercise your free will because you know you've got it. If you are accepting the Catholic faith, then you'll accept that there's predestination which operates even in the context of your free will.
So you said
and you
something
say
really
a divine
important.
mystery.
You said divine mystery. Does that hold up in court? Does divine mystery hold up in court?
It holds up in the courts of God.
So that's your evidence. Your evidence that God is real is that God believes that He's real.
No.
That we should believe that God is real.
I wasn't
because
even
in the court of
talking
God,
about. I wasn't talking about the reason to believe that God exists. I wasn't talking about that.
Yeah,
I mean, what you may have heard when I was talking to this guy about how you exercise your judgment without emotion.
how can you do that? That's a conundrum.
Without impossible.
That's a conundrum. What? All we have
Well,
is
then when
feelings,
you do
no?
maths, I'm not feeling sorry for you.
Logic.
Without emotion.
Without emotion, we're supposed to rationalise.
Deductive logic.
How,
I have no
There's
feelings
not a
towards
single
2
deductive
plus 2.
argument. This is
It is 4 whether I
I'm
like
not saying
it or
there
not.
is.
Alright,
I'm
that's
saying
fair.
you can
That's
exercise
fair.
it without
It's
emotion.
impossible.
I don't think you can.
You can't do deduction. You can't do logic without emotion.
No, you can't exercise judgment without emotion.
Well, insofar as we're emotional beings, we might be emotional as we're doing the exercise, but you really can't do a basic syllogism without emotion affecting
No,
your
but in a
results.
theological inquiry, you can't use deductive logic. You can't like deductively deduce whether or not Jesus turned water into wine. You can't mathematically
You
calculate
can
that.
deduce from the scriptures whether he's God
No, you can't.
on the basis of scriptural
The scriptures are
information.
totally ambiguous.
Totally.
Can you read? Can you read?
Totally.
What?
Totally, I think.
No, yeah, they are quite ambiguous.
Oh, no, it's quite ambiguous.
Well, can
said
you read it?
totally
Can you
ambiguous.
read? Can you read Koine Greek and Aramaic?
What's that
Who cares?
These are historical texts.
You
These
don't
are
have to
the
read. That's
original-
nothing to do with.
Absolutely you
That's
do.
nothing to do with your point that you can't assess. So you cannot make deductions from the text of scripture. That's like what you're saying is you can't actually make deductions from any text.
What does Aristotle say? Deductive logic is.
It doesn't matter what you say.
He absolutely does, because he's the one who
No, it
established
doesn't.
what it is in
I'm
magic.
just asking
Go on,
you.
what does it say?
I'm asking you, can you make
Okay.
deductions from
Okay,
text?
who am I answering? Am I answering you or am I answering
You asked me a question,
Yeah.
and I was saying it doesn't matter what Aristotle says, because what I'm saying to you is you're saying you can take a text and you can't make deductions from a text.
No, you can't make deductions from the text.
Right, okay, now talk to him.
Okay.